It is finally time. This is season 4 of the C3 podcast, now known as Cocktails, Culture, and Conversations. I haven't updated graphic below yet, but trust me, that's coming. Look, this brand new season has been something we've been working on behind the scenes for the past couple of months. We're going to talk about it a little bit when we get into this first episode for season 4. We got new hosts coming to the podcast. We got new formats. We got segments. So we're going to be giving you guys a lot of different things coming with this podcast. We're going to be diving into some different topics that we've never really touched before on the C3 podcast, and we're aligning it with obviously Ebony Ascent and our platform that we've launched, because we're going to be diving into all the topics that we feel like are important to the culture and where we should be having some intelligent conversations. The new format for the season going forward, it's me and my brand new co-host, Mr. Maine Terry, and we are going to be talking about the wealth disparity in America. And, this was a very interesting conversation. We did it live. We got together down in Greensboro, North Carolina every year. Maine and myself, Maine, and some of our college buddies, we have a cookout every year to make sure we stay together, get that bond, bring the families. And while we were there, we took advantage of it. So we rented out of space. We did a live podcast recording, and we jumped into it. And what I love about this topic specifically for me, and you guys hear about it when you get into the podcast, is this is near and dear to my heart, because personal finance is something that is become a passion of mine. It's something that I feel like in the Black community is sorely needed. And it's a base, a foundation for a lot of the things we do here at Ebony Ascent and On the Corner Media. And we're going to be leaning into that heavily more. So we do have a Money-ish blog and a Money-ish web series that will be coming soon, diving into that, because we want to make sure that, look, when it comes to personal finance, that this is something that we as Black people no longer run away from, and that we take it on headstrong, right? We get into it, we have these conversations, we talk about it, we bring these things up, and we learn and educate ourselves. And this is what our platform that we're building has really been all about. And so, this conversation, I really love the fact that we were able to jump into this, and we talk about a bunch of different things. We go into business cycles, we go into other things about business, but it's a very dope conversation. I'm glad that we were able to get it together and have it. And, my personal plea to all of you that are listening to this or engaging with this, look, if personal finance is a thing that you've struggled with, like, lock in with us on this, engage with us on this, send us feedback on this. You can hit us up at info@onthecorner.us. You can follow us on Twitter, Ascent Ebony on Twitter. On Instagram, it's Ebony Ascent. Our Facebook page is Ebony Ascent. Obviously, you can go to ebonyascent.com, log in, subscribe, because once you do that, you can actually leave comments directly on the post that we make on the platform. We want to hear from you about this. We want to understand, things that you are struggling with if you got personal finance, or things that you would like to see more from us. So don't forget to engage, lock in, follow us on the socials, subscribe to the platform. And that's it. I really wanted to just do this and welcome you. Going forward, we'll always have this nice little intro segment where one of the hosts, will just be kind of talking to you a little bit about the topic that's coming up and why it's near and dear to us. And hope you guys enjoy. Get ready for the new format. Let's get straight to the pod. Y'all know what it is. To the next cocktail, to the next conversation. But it ain't over yet. We got to get y'all to the pod. Welcome to season 4. Let's get it.
Try different wines.
What's your favorite wine? Red or white? Hold on, first.
Red.
Okay, all right.
I'm sophisticated.
A part of me was just like, y'all, we've been great. You're just now figuring it out, but we've been great. That's who we are. It's in our DNA.
So, like, do my Colossal Deadpool, like, impersonation, 1 or 2 moments, right? It's.
And I'm sitting there in my head going, I wonder if I can somehow sniff the traffic going from the armband. It's got to be talking to an API or something.
To the next cocktail, to the next conversation. All right, and so this season, we do have another co-host that will be coming, and we're going to kind of do a nice little, like, a secret reveal. Not really. She just couldn't be here for the filming of this one, but we will be announcing her officially in the next couple of episodes, so be ready for that.
COVID is real.
It is so real.
COVID is still real.
For now, let's hop into it, man. Let's get into the topic.
Let's get into it, bro.
So we'll be talking about the wealth disparity in America. Tough topic.
It's tough because it hits home for
it does
80% of Americans.
A lot of Americans, man. There's a lot of unfortunate numbers out there when you start to look at it, specifically within the Black community, right? There was one I remember specifically in the Northeast, I want to say it was Boston or Rhode Island, that basically said, it wasn't Rhode Island, it was Boston, that the net worth of Black Americans would be like negative in the next 10 years compared to, which again, we're talking about the Northeast, which is predominantly white area, which was like a 70%, right? That their net worth would increase. And so it's just, we still have a high number of communities in this country where the wealth gap is just, at some point, it's insurmountable, right? And so there's a lot when you dig into this topic from, the class of work that a lot of minorities work in, or just the average American works in, unskilled labor versus skilled labor. There's, the personal finance aspect of it, money management, things of that nature, learning how to deal with and access money, the mindset about money. And then I think there's another part of it, which is just at some point, do we need to start seriously considering, like, as a society, things like, basic universal income, right? And having something that just helps out, the average American, right? And not, not be so capitalistic, which is tough for me to say because I'm a capitalist at heart. But still, like, there should be at least something there to make sure that everybody can at least take care of themselves, right?
So does it necessarily need to be an issue where we're talking about universal income, or is it something that could be handled with maybe tying wage increases with the rate of inflation, ensuring that people have actual livable wage, no matter what level of labor, skilled labor or unskilled labor, ensuring that, part-time employees have things like healthcare assistance, insurance, things like that. I think there are things that we can do in this country, and maybe we can't just rely on corporations to do it on their own.
Right.
But there's things that we can do in this country, federalize policies that allows people to actually live comfortably with the work, with the wages that they're making.
So let's stay there and dig into that, right? I think so. Tying wages to inflation covers that aspect and making sure that, okay, as the cost of things go up, then your wage goes up. So you should kind of keep equal. But the way it's set up right now, in some instances, right, it doesn't protect the corporations on the other side, right? Because one of the most expensive, resources that a company has is their employees, right? That's when you look at payroll, when you look at running a business, right? That's the one thing that it's usually in the high 50s to 60% of like what you're paying for is your payroll. So if that's constantly going up, but sales aren't going up, right? And then the cost, if we're a manufacturer, the cost of other things to go buy goes up. I have multiple things that are rising, but my profits are staying the same. Which, when you look at that from a corporation and people look at it as like, well, who cares about the business? Families got to eat. No, I get it. But that corporation has to stay in existence in order to even cover that wage in the first place. So while the initial part of me is like, yes, I'm all for it. Let's make sure wages stick with inflation. What do we do on the backside for the businesses to make sure that they can stay in business with those rising costs? Because again, like if 2/3 of my costs rise, but I'm still selling the same product and the sales numbers that I'm getting out are the same, it's not gonna equate. That business is gonna go out.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm not a licensed economist or anything like that. like my
what?
Yeah. I'm sorry, man. I'm a jack of many trades, but being a licensed economist is not one of those trades. But so I guess we need to get to the root of what is actually the root cause of inflation. I kind of understand, inflation is tied to really the printing of more money. Right. And in this country, we actually, like, nationwide, not just like the individual person, but businesses, the government itself, we spend more money than what exists in this country. That's the only way you're like $30 trillion in debt. Like, it's ridiculous. How is a country $30 trillion in debt when there's not $30 trillion that exists to begin with? Right. And so that's part of the inflation. And so I know that there's, you got to make money to make money. But I think that we need to kind of dial back on actually printing money, dial back on what banks are allowed to loan, who they're allowed to loan to, and that would kind of tamper down the inflation a little bit. So
it's and actually what you're talking about right there, those last couple of sentences are exactly what happens with the business cycles, right? So, and again, neither one of us are economists, right? studied a little bit more, for the things that I do from a personal finance perspective. So I'm trying to think of a way to get into it without like digging into all the details of like a business cycle and things like that. But basically, so inflation generally, so people, as you hear this, always, I hate that phrase, do your own research, but in this case, do your own research. And you do that research, look at things like, don't go to YouTube and like Google stuff. Obviously use YouTube, Investopedia, like read up these definitions and make sure you understand them. But basically what happens with inflation is when, to your point, when you're printing money, the access to money is cheaper and people are spending more, right? So if you're looking at it and the current economy is, okay, there's money out there. It's cheap to borrow money, meaning interest rates that you borrow money from banks and that banks lend to each other are really, really low. That means the ability to get money is quote unquote cheap, right? So if I break that down and says, okay, Maine, I'll let you borrow $10 and you only have to pay me a penny for every dollar that you borrow from me, right? And then I'm going to charge you that rate every month, right? So you're like, okay, I can get $10 and I got to pay you a penny, like until I pay you back the whole 10. Cool, I'm gonna borrow it. So you'll borrow it, you'll go buy more things, you'll do more things. And so as money is being spent, more things are being consumed, more goods are getting created. And so what tends to happen, again, it's capitalist society, right? Prices tend to rise. That's what inflation is. It's like, okay, and that it goes back to supply and demand. There's a greater demand because there's more money, people have access to more things, so demand goes up. Now, this is kind of what you want in an economy, right? Now, when it starts to get out of control, to your point, is when there's more money out there to spend and it causes more and more spending. What we saw in the last 2 years, which is why inflation right now is hitting as hard as it is because we were kind of in a cycle to where we had been progressively growing for a while. And when this happens, the cycle needs to kind of repeat itself. It goes up, it peaks, and then it comes back down. Part of what comes back down is you stop printing less money. You start raising interest rates for banks, what they borrow to each other, also what they charge the consumers. When you do that, it becomes more expensive to borrow money. So if I go back to my example, if I gave you $10 and said you only have to pay me 1 cent, now say if you borrow $10, you got to pay me $2. That's a big difference, right? I went from a penny to $2. So now when you borrow that money, you'll be like, maybe I'll just borrow 10 instead of borrowing 100.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get you that money back really, really quick, right? Or you just might not borrow it at all. You'd be like, you know what? I'm going to wait. I'll probably do something else. That's what you want. To do what? Slow down spending. When you slow down spending, not as many things are being purchased. When things are being purchased, that means the demand is going down. So then companies spend less if they're manufacturing. I'm not going to have as much things that I have in inventory because not a lot of people aren't buying them, right? Again, that's how you slow the economy down. You slow that inflation because things aren't being spent as much. And so these, in general, these two tricks is how you balance that. And you move an economy from what we call expansion, when things are rising, everything's good, to a peak, to then it starts to come down when it's like, okay, we're starting to bring things down and slow things down. And we just ride that cycle, right? If you go back over history, the last 50 years, we've gone through the cycle a number of times. And what you want is you don't want a huge, long period of expansion, actually, because what happens is when it does drop back down, it hits hard. Think about it. From 2008, when we had our quote unquote Great Recession, we were in expansion up until 2020. So you have almost an entire generation that thinks like this is the way things are, and they're not preparing for the other side of it when things need to slow down, right? So look, we just threw a whole lot at you. Like I said, please make sure go. Investopedia is a great website to go to look at all these terms, look at what these things mean. But in general, just remember that things go in a cycle, right? Things go up, things go down, right? When you spend more, when things are going up, that rises everything. So that means demand is up. So, companies respond to that. They buy more things to be able to make sure that you can buy the things, and everything rises up. And then you want to slow that back down, right? What you want to try and avoid through fiscal policy is like these jerks, like that we're kind of getting into right now, where it's like, crap, this is way out of control. So now we got to take a sudden change, hike interest rates way up, like slow everything down, right? So imagine if you're in a car, it's like slamming on the brakes. You usually want to be like, oh, I got to stop. Let me slowly push on the brakes. Sometimes you got to slam on the brakes. It's like we have to reverse this trend. So when it comes to kind of controlling inflation, like those things are actually in place, but most of it for like the common consumer, right, is understanding what those are. And then as we kind of talked about, the other thing is money management, right? Is it within all of that, making sure that you're managing your money accordingly, no matter what kind of cycle we're in. Because most people, average Americans, unless you're into finance like me and stuff like that, doing this for a living and working with people, you don't give a shit. You don't care if it's expansion, you don't care none of that. All you want to know is how much gas costs, how much groceries cost, and how much I do think I want to buy costs.
And
That's
how I'm going to pay these bills. You need to know how you're going to pay those bills. So, all right. So the topic is kind of talking about the wealth disparity,
yeah.
the wealth gap in America. So when factoring in things like inflation, the speeding up, the expansion of the economy, the contraction of the economy, slowing down everything. So how does this impact the everyday American, and how is that different from the impacts that, let's say, a CEO of a Fortune 500 company is impacted, or a billionaire, tech bro is impacted? Like, so how do we kind of wrap our minds around the different types of people that are affected by the economy?
So, man, it's such a loaded question because there's so much to dive into there, right? So the immediate thing is we have a big gap between, like, I keep going back to skilled labor and unskilled labor. And what I mean by that is, like, it's not necessarily if you go out and have degrees and all this stuff or whatever. It's just really the areas that are hot. So you look at your doctors, your lawyers, your engineers, your tech bros, right? Where, if we break everything down to a per hour, these professionals are in the hundreds of dollars per hour category of what they're making, right? Compared to, somebody that making to like unskilled labor or low skilled labor where it's like, maybe I just got a bachelor's degree or I don't have a degree at all. And it's just either manual labor or like I work in a store or something like that or whatever, right? They're at most, maybe it's 20 an hour, right? But it's nowhere near the 300, 400, 500 an hour that these are commanding, right?
And we're talking about some people are making $750 an hour,
right?
And how so that the struggle is real for people who are
Yes.
making minimum wage, and then they're making minimum wage and not even working full time,
right? And so then that's the first, I think, that we talk about is that huge gap, right? And how we've moved from a society to where, like, it was, we used to be a manufacturing country, right? So, being on the front lines, either their manufacturing plant or like working at a restaurant, things like that or whatever, that was more of the norm. So prices and everything around you kind of fit that, right? But then as we shifted into this kind of more services oriented and now, tech, lawyers, engineers kind of driven, like, and that went that way, like, so did the kind of economy go with it, right? So you've got people who are making, this much money, and as everything rose with inflation, they were protected by inflation. So if, to make this really easier, if we said we were in an economy before, let's go back 50 years, and the average person made $10 an hour. Okay, cool. And then somebody that made $50 or $100, $200 an hour, they were in the 1%. All right, like, hate all you want to, it didn't matter, but everybody else was okay. But what happened was, as we started to, like, rise as we normally do with prices, right? Prices kept going and going and going and going, and these people stayed in that same group, right? To your early point, like, wages weren't rising with inflation. But we saw a shift of more people kind of going over, getting degrees, going over to the skilled labor. And so they were kind of protected by that inflation as it came up. Because, again, if prices went up, it didn't affect them as much, because if we go downstream by hour, one person's making $7 an hour, another person's making $300. So if something costs 5 to 10, it doesn't really hurt them that much. It hurts this person over at 7, but it doesn't hurt this person over here, right? So I don't think the answer to that is like everybody needs to go and become skilled labor. We've tried to do this in the past where it's like, oh, when economies change, we need to do, let's reskill the workforce and have them go and learn and stuff like that or whatever. I'm for that, but that can't just be the answer, right? That's not everybody's cut out to be an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, right? It needs to be an ability to, get access to these same type of wages without having to do that if you don't want to be. Now, I'm not saying like, without putting all the work, somebody should make the same as an engineer or a doctor. No, like, they put in a lot of work to get that. But there's got to be some kind of path. So the first kind of gap that we have is that disparity in just like the skill sets, right? And that it is such a big demand on the kind of like highly skilled set that's creating this bigger and bigger gap. And so now you have, places as we've shifted, like you look at middle America, used to be good at manufacturing and farming and stuff like that. That's just not something we do as a society. We still do it, but it's not like our main source of income anymore. It's services and tech. And so that means you shut down plants, right? Automotive plants are becoming now more automated. Like, so all these things that, I would say like middle America kind of relied on as areas to go and get their income are shifting now. and there's nowhere for them to go.
Well, so here's one of the main problems, because a lot of that skilled manufacturing labor, companies don't even do that here in America anymore.
Right.
It's in the Philippines, it's in India, it's in China, it's in Mexico. So a lot of our skilled labor is actually being,
Outsourced.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for continuing to be after 22 years. So like all of that stuff is being outsourced. So it's cheaper for corporations to actually have their stuff made someplace else and then bring it back than it is to have it made here in America.
Right.
Because, I mean, being a capitalist, corporations don't want to pay the wages. It's a high percentage of their budget, and they really don't want to pay the wages. So you have people who are making $7, $7.50 an hour minimum wage, and the companies are like, I don't want to give you much more than that, and on top of that, I don't want to offer you benefits, so we're not going to hire you on full time.
So yeah, and I want to yes, but no. So here's when you look at it and say, okay, well, they don't want to pay wages, they don't want to pay these benefits, right? And having been in these conversations on this side, the problem with this is it's not thought about at an individual level. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, okay, are there some companies out there that just don't do it? Probably. There's some evil people out there. So I'm not going to speak for every company. But majority of the time, when you're looking at it, these companies are looking at it at a scale. So they're just saying like, look, if we want to do this, right, here's how much we pay for our overall wages. So let's use really easy numbers. Let's say total numbers for our company. It costs me $100 a month to pay all of my employees, right? So that's that. And then it's $300 a month for the benefits. So there's $400 a month I'm spending, right, on the labor. And this goes all into what they call cost of goods sold. This is how much it costs me to do whatever it is. If I'm giving a service or selling a product. All right, so I'm at $400, cool. But my product sales every month only net me $600, right? So I have a $200 profit. Okay, cool. So then if you tell me, all right, well, your wages are going to go up 30%, and my benefits are going to go up 10%. So I've got a 40% increase in how much it costs me to make this thing, but my sales stay the same, right? I only had $200 in profit. Now that money's been eaten up, right? And if it gets to a point, you're always trying to control the numbers to say that there's a margin, we're making money, we have profit there, and that we're able to, what we call service the debt, right? Because a lot of companies don't actually operate on, they don't pay you out of their revenue. What they'll do is say, okay, we're a company, we'll go establish, we'll get a line of credit, or we'll get a loan, we'll get debt, like for $100,000, and I'll use that to pay all my resources every month. And then I'm paying that debt back based on how much I'm selling, right? So when you look at that, that's why companies look at it and go, they're going to be resistant to wages because they're just looking at numbers, right? Yeah. Which sucks because I've been in these meetings when you have to look at that and it's like, but these aren't just numbers. Like these are people, like these are like real things that like we can't just say, oh, we can save 20% by doing this healthcare plan. And I'm guaranteed they don't look at the healthcare plan and go, oh, well, but this doesn't provide like prenatal vitamins if they're pregnant, or it doesn't do this. Like they won't look at the plan and see like the actual features of it. They're just going to look at the numbers and go, we can save 20%. So if we save 20%, we're doing a good job because that means we can still offer it. And we'll be able to, because we save 20% here, then we can raise wages over here. So we did a good thing, right? Like we gave you healthcare, we gave you a 10% raise. Like why isn't everybody happy? Yeah. Because they're looking at it at a large scale in numbers. And I'm not saying it to defend it, right? It sucks. We need to do better about it, but there's always nuance in everything when you look at it, right? Because when you look at it at the individual level, I guarantee you, no corporation they'd be like, absolutely, we got to pay you guys more because they want the workers to be there. Because if you work, that means they create the stuff we can go sell more. But it's looking at numbers, and this is where it becomes really like it's hard, man.
Yeah,
like,
and the pressure being in a capitalist society, the pressure on the bigger the corporation, the higher the pressure to increase revenue. If you're a publicly listed traded company, like it's more important for that company to increase revenue than it is to maintain employee happiness and stuff like that. So I get it, right? Like I'm not saying every corporation is evil. I'm just saying that the pressures of a capitalist society makes it so that you have, as a business, you have to look at numbers instead of individuals.
Right.
And you know, the bigger the business, the worse it is for the people at the bottom of that business.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate. And you know, that goes a long way into creating that whole wage disparity and what the day-to-day workers have to deal with.
Right. And so, kind of bringing that back, right? So we go back to our main topic of the disparity, right? So you look at this and go, so then corporations look at that and go, all right, well, we're going to do what we can to provide a great environment, continue to make a profit. Like the corporation's job is like, if we're making money and making profit, we can stay in existence so we can continue to give you someplace to come and be employed at, right? And the corporation push back and go, well, it's not really our job to make sure that you're meeting your like the standard life standards. Like if you're not making enough, right? Like it's not our job as a company to make sure that you're making enough to feed yourself. Like our job as a company is to create this product or whatever it is, right? I know, very ugly deal. But when you look at that, so then a corporation push back and go, okay, well, that's not on us. So like then you as an individual, like what are you doing to make sure that you're having that? I think it's where like, I'm actually for like some kind of, basic universal income, something, right? So where there's at least some kind of, it doesn't have to be a whole lot, like we could get into the whole welfare fucking topic, I really don't want to, but my point is like, there needs to be something there to at least make sure that people can be stable, like no matter what, right? And I think there's enough between corporations and the ridiculous amount of billionaires we have in this country, where we could find something that says like, even if it's just something as simple as like, you will get $500 a month, right? Like it doesn't have to be some crazy amount. Like we're not like, I think every time people talk about this, it's like, we're gonna be paying this and that. Why? It's like, why should I pay my taxes, this or whatever? It's like, dude, like whatever. Like you're never gonna miss it, right? If we just give somebody like something basic to where it's like, no matter what, we know that people can put a roof over their head, they can put food in their mouth, they can take care of themselves on top of whatever they're doing to go work, right? I think that would, sad thing is, we'll probably get something like that before we get wages tied to inflation, which I think I'm with you. Like I would love to see and work, and that would do a lot to the wealth gap. Is that because what it does is as it puts pressure on the corporations and everybody else as we continue to make more money and things get spent and we go up, like then your costs are going to go up, right? Which is going to cause corporations to think about it and go, all right, how can we either got to make better services or do this? They're always going to be looking at things to kind of increase that profit margin.
And
right?
I think it'll also put pressure on the government to chill on printing new money.
Yeah.
And that is and taking on new debt.
Right.
And I think it'll help keep jobs in the country. It'll help keep people focused on, all right, we actually need to work together instead of having a division of, the haves and the have-nots.
Right.
So like I said, not a licensed economist by any stretch of the imagination. This is just two brothers talking about the economy the best we understand of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that some way tying at least the minimum, the federal minimum wage, so like no one makes below this this amount, no matter what, however many hours you put in or whatever your level of skilled labor is, no one makes less than this amount, and it is always tied to the rate of inflation, so that maybe we don't do a universal income, we just do minimum wage tied to inflation. That way we know everyone who is working can survive.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah. Let's take a break and talk about our cocktail of the week, the Bourbon Smash.
Hey y'all. Today we're getting started with the classic cocktail, the Bourbon Smash. We're going to start off with about 8 to 10 mint leaves, and we're going to place the mint leaves at the bottom of our mixing glass. I already have a pre-cut lemon, and we're going to go ahead and use those 4 lemon wedges, facing them down so that we can get all of the juice out of the lemon wedges and avoid getting the bitterness from the lemon peel. This will also help us by not over muddling the mint leaves or the lemon for this cocktail. We're gonna smush everything out of there, get all of that juice. This should be about 1 ounce of lemon juice. So if you have lemon juice instead of a lemon, you can still use it. We are making our own sweet and sour. Now we're gonna go ahead to the next step, which is adding the simple syrup. I'm only adding 3/4 of an ounce here. If you like your drink sweeter or like granulated sugar, go ahead and sub it out. We're now going to add 2 ounces of the bourbon. Today's bourbon is going to be Bullet. If you prefer a different bourbon, you're more than welcome to substitute. As long as it's 2 ounces of bourbon for this cocktail, you'll be in the clear. Let's get all of the contents from the mixing glass into our new glass, which is the shaker glass, add ice so we can shake all those flavors together. And then we're gonna go ahead and just pour everything out over ice. That is the bourbon smash. If you like to garnish, I'd say grab a couple of mint leaves with the stem still attached and slap the mint leaves in the palm of your hand to release the oils and aromatic of the mint. Place it in your cup and you're all set.
I mean, it's, there's ways that other countries have done it, and we didn't do a lot of research on this topic beforehand because that's what we do. We just come up with stuff on the top of our head.
Winging it.
Right, winging it, man. But I will probably go back and do some research and post it on the Ascent website on the C3 podcast about this. But I know when I lived in Australia, one of the things that was interesting there, so Australia has the equivalent of what we call Social Security is different.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody kind of gets, it's kind of like a government funded and managed 401k. Think about it that way. Right, that you get access to, right? And because of this, and there's some other nuances of their economy. So for my Australian brothers and sisters who are watching, first of all, what's up? I'm coming back at some point. But it allows people to make a living as a bartender or as a waitress, even part-time. And I remember going to a bar and talking to one of the bartenders, and they were, kind of fresh out of college. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do. And so there's I'm just going to bartend for a couple of years to figure out. And I was like, how does that work though? Can you make a living like that? She goes, yeah, I make plenty. Now, granted, over there, you don't tip them. Tips are built into the wages. Their wages
you
are
actually get paid.
Right, exactly. Their wages are set up different, things like that or whatever. But it was this young lady. She had to be 25, 26, part-time bartender, and was had an apartment, was completely able to take care of herself. She had no worries of whether or not she would be okay. And I was like, this is dope. And this could be possible, right? So I think I definitely know there are ways. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it is America, right? We have to decide that we have to do something different. And that's going to be the biggest challenge is that, getting this country to realize that, whatever we did 100 years ago doesn't matter because it doesn't work today, right? And accepting that fact and willing to get across party lines and all the political bullshit to just say, look, at the end of the day, we have to look out for one another as Americans, right? Whatever that means, right? Yeah. Creating something to where we know the average American can be okay. That's it. That's all we're asking, right? It's just, but things have gotten so bad now where it's so politicized left and right that they immediately go to either side. And it's you're missing what's in the middle. And what's in the middle is where stuff like this falls, right? This disparity gap, this wealth gap. It's because they're arguing all over this other shit and people in the middle are losing out, right? And it's a huge problem that we have that's only getting worse. And there's other problems that we'll probably talk about that I feel all fall into this gap of just overly politicized bullshit, right? Where it's, well, I'm a this and you're a that, so I believe this and that, and this can never agree. And it's you're missing the fucking point.
Yeah. And that's why I can never claim one side because, whether you're red, blue, whether you're a blue voter in a red state or a red voter in a blue state, none of that really matters when it comes down to what do we need to advance the country and make the country better.
Right.
And even though we may have different ideas on what we think would make the country better, we need to be able to sit down and talk about that type of stuff. And that's what we're doing now. We're just having a real conversation. And I don't think that Americans always have the maturity level to be able to sit down and do that. And that's kind of, that's kind of the problem.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's all highly politicized bullshit and people just can't see past that to see what the actual issue is and talk about real solutions to these issues. But you brought up a very interesting point about, the corporation. It's not the corporation's job to take care of the employees. Some are pretty good because they know that we want the employees to be here. We want them healthy. We want them working. We want them to want to come to work. So they take the steps to do that. But on the back end, what are we as Americans, as individuals, as family members, fathers, mothers, what are we doing and what can we do to actually set our families up and ourselves up to be able to survive in inflation or whatever else this country decides to throw at us? So I think that's something that we can talk about is hey, what can we look at within our own budgets, within our own finances, and how can we put together a better plan to sustain ourselves and sustain our families.
Yeah, I think, the first thing is you got to talk about money, right? Like you need to normalize talking about money in your household. Like it's not taboo. It's not this or whatever. Like I think, what I've heard a lot of, especially in the Black community, is that when it comes to talking about money, it just doesn't happen. People, they find it disrespectful. I'll be asked about how much money, like get over all that shit. Like talk about money.
What about the idea that employees shouldn't discuss their wages as well? How do you feel about that?
So there's reasons for that.
Oh, I know there's reasons for that, but I mean, I personally, and I'm in the military.
Right.
For those of you who don't know, I'm in the military. So my wage, what I get paid is public knowledge.
That's right.
Everybody in America can go online, type in wages for a chief warrant officer in the Army, and you know exactly what I'm making. Why is that not universal with all businesses?
Okay, because
I put you in the spot because I literally just told America to look up, go online and look up what I make, and then watch David try to defend his position on that.
But okay, again, nuance, people. There's always nuance. So the main reason is because you don't in the military, which is more of a government structure. There's it's been set and there's structures, and you fall into levels. It's not like that with private corporations, right? Mm-hmm. You can truly discriminate, to be honest. And not, when I say discriminate, not age, race, all of it, but it's just I can say, well, I'm going to pay this engineer this much, and I'm going to pay this person this much. It's just, there's levels, right? You're not going to find an administrative assistant that makes as much as a senior software engineer. No, you're not. It's how that company values that position. And then within there's different things. Quite frankly, there are some, I can speak to it from tech, right? So if I look at tech and I've got a team of 10 people, 10 engineers, right? Who I'm going to value more are my senior engineers. Mm-hmm. The guy or gal who's been coding, who when I know when they come to work and they go in, they up level everything the rest of the team does. They deliver stuff on time. They build the most complex stuff. We cannot get this done without them. I'm going to pay them probably 1.5 to 2 times more than anybody else that's on that staff. Easy, right? So speaking into maturity, the reason why that's kind of disallowed is because most people aren't mature enough to realize that this person is more valuable, so they're gonna get more. You are not. You're a June. You just came out of college and making this, so here's what you're going to make, and that's where it's at. And it's based on contributions to the company and what's going on, but it's also based on that company's policy and their decision to do what they want to do. It's not really completely a fair set there. You can decide where you want that money to go. And so what happens is those conversations can become very uncomfortable. Then when it's well, all right, I got these mids who are I want to be a senior. I want to get paid just like them. And it's okay, well, here are the things that you got to do. There's kind of a general direction, mm-hmm. But will you ever kind of get to that? Probably not. Again, go back to the conversation I had about wages overall. So if I'm paying 10 of them and I've got a set budget, honestly, it's probably going to stay around that for the next 3 or 4 years. You'll get increases, but again, I'm not trying to increase the wages overall by 30%, especially every year when there's a raise. This is just reality, folks. It's how it comes down. It's numbers. So why there's this thing you don't want to talk about wages? Number one, the employers don't want to try to find how much they're paying y'all, right? And most of that is because there's the evil side of it, where people's well, employers don't want to unionize and all this stuff or whatever. I don't believe in that. I think they should, but it's are you ready to have the mature conversation about it? They go, this is exactly why this person pays this and this person pays this. Yeah. And here's your ladder where you can get to. And then and also the answer may be, guess what? If it's of a smaller company, you will never get to this position. Right? So not here as a company. Mm-hmm. Now we can work with you to give you those skills and to where you're at that level, and you can go somewhere else and go find that, right? Again, it comes down to numbers and how it operates. Now, no employer wants to say that because they want to keep their employees for as long as they can and pay them
as little as they
possibly can over the course of time. So the reason why it's not talked about because it's literally two adjacent goals, right? Mm-hmm. The employee wants to make as much as they can to get as much experience, and the employer wants that, but they want to pay as little as they possibly can for, right? And so there's just, in business, there hasn't been a set or a pattern of talking about that in mature ways. Yeah. And so that's why I think there's that. No, that's not why I think. That's exactly why that stigma is if you don't want employees talking about it, because it just, I mean, people get emotional about it, which they should, and I get it. But
that's one of the stigmas that needs to change. Honestly, I think it's healthy for a society and for a company to have employees that know exactly where they are. And if they, if you're not comfortable with the company, I think employers should be like, if you're not comfortable with where you are, okay, I'm sorry for you. You can get the step in, and we'll bring in somebody who is comfortable with being in that position. So I think it's beneficial for the employer, it's beneficial for the employee, and then it's beneficial for society to understand that that's how the workforce should operate.
The best companies I've worked at that manage this well, to an extent, do exactly that. Like, they will sit down and talk. It's like, here's where you are. Here's our levels, right? Here's where you need to get to, and work with you and say, all right, let's set goals for where you want to get to now. And they'll tell you, it's like, look, we're going to prepare you for this position, right? And we'll get you there, like, and we'll help you kind of grow to get there. But like, even when you get there, like, you may not get like everything that you want. We may not be able to pay you market rates. There's another thing, and it's stupid, but it's numbers and it makes sense. Like, sometimes it is literally cheaper for a company to go bring somebody in and pay them at a higher level than to raise your money. Like, makes no effing sense. Trust me. But having had to be in that conversation, look at the numbers, I was like, damn it. Like, it makes sense, right? Like, from a numbers perspective. And so sometimes, like, but just knowing that, right? I'll give you guys a story. My first manager coming out of college, I won't name companies because that will probably get us in trouble. But she sat down with me and was like, look, she laid it all out. Mm-hmm. She was like, you're smart. I think you're going to do great here. She was like, but you need to leave. And I was like, leave? Why? Like, she was like, because I'm going to tell you how your career is going to go. She goes, you're gonna get on project, you're gonna do great, you're gonna do this, I'm gonna give you this little bullshit 7% raise, and I'm gonna give you the 10% raise, and then you're gonna find out like what people at your level are making, and you're gonna come to me and demand that I pay you at that level. And I'm gonna look at you and go, I can't. And then you're gonna get mad at me when I go find somebody at your level outside and pay them double what I'm paying you. So here's what I'm telling you. If you wanna stay here with this company, leave now, go get the experience, come back, I can pay you much more. This is how it works. Yeah. I was like, well, shit.
That's also how it works in the federal level.
I'm like,
it really is. But everybody, it's all laid out. Everybody sees it.
Right.
And so that's why, especially for military veterans, everyone gets out, contracts, get the experience, and then comes back as a govy, 14 or 15 level, getting paid double what they were doing the same exact job as, an entry level guy. It's crazy.
It's just when I think if more people realize that, like, working for a company is a transaction, right? It's not a right. It's not a thing that you should do. Like, get your feelings out of it. I think that's the biggest thing. If you get your feelings out of it and just like, okay, I'm coming to work. The whole purpose of why they are hiring me is not to make me feel good and like all the family stuff. And like, you should enjoy where you're working. I'm not saying you shouldn't. You absolutely should. But at the end of the day, it's a transaction. You are there to provide a service to this company so they can create a product or service, and they're paying you for that. If you focus on that when it comes to like the money negotiations and all that stuff or whatever, it becomes a lot easier both for you and the employer. And then for you, you can start to put these employers against each other and go, okay, well, cool. Well, this is what I want to do. And let me get these skills here. And let me go find employers who are going to pay me the most to go do this, right? And we've actually kind of moved more into that society. Like, people are less loyal. But getting back to like how people should kind of start budgets on the family, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so number one, talk about money. Make sure you're having those conversations, right? Whether you're a married couple, your family, kids, like, just talk about money. Make sure everybody starts to understand the basic fundamentals of it. If you don't know what those are, start to learn those, right? Like learn about savings, learn about investing, learn about like simple budgeting, money 101. I make this much, it comes in, this much goes out. I pay this much in taxes, all that stuff or whatever. Really understand like what they say, gross, like how much you make, and then net, how much you actually bring home. Understand those two things. Mm-hmm. And it becomes very simple subtraction, right? I make 10, I pay 8. I got 2 left over. Right? Like, there it is. Like, start there and make sure kind of everybody understands that. And then from there, you start moving into the next thing, which is creating a budget, which I know everybody hates to hear, and everybody kind of has their little different ways of it. But that's a budget is, at its base fundamental, needs to be you tracking how much you spend and get out and reducing that as much as possible. Mm-hmm. How you do that is up to you. There's extreme ways to do it. Like, I know like Dave Ramsey out there, like he cut up all your credit cards, do this, don't eat out, pack a lunch every day, all this stuff, whatever. And those things work. I'm not knocking any of those things, but I think where people kind of have gone wrong with this, like you have to make something that still works for you and your lifestyle. Now, it does mean sacrifices. Like, you have to make a sacrifice, mm-hmm. but you have to figure out what those are. Like, some people, like, if I told you like you can't drink Starbucks, they would just go ahead and jump off a fucking cliff. They'd be like, I'm done. I can't do it. Like if you telling me the only way I'm gonna be rich is I can't drink Starbucks, I don't fucking want to be rich. I'm gonna die. Okay, fine. Maybe let's let you keep your Starbucks. Let's find something else. There's plenty of stuff in your budget where you spend it where you can cut back on. But the thing is, you have to figure out what that is, right? And I think so many people try to like when they start this, they look at it, and most of the time they get overwhelmed. They realize like how much they don't have, and it's like I'm cutting off everything. And they try and become a hermit like overnight, or try and like that's really hard.
Yeah.
That's you're gonna yo-yo, right? You're gonna start for like 2 weeks and like this sucks. I hate this.
It's a struggle.
Yeah. You gonna scroll on fucking Instagram and TikTok, which you shouldn't fucking probably be on anyway. Start going, oh, people are doing this and they're having so much fun. I want to go out and do that. And now all of a sudden you broke what you were supposed to be doing, right? So you have to sit down and start to look at your lifestyle and find things that you can start to sacrifice and ease into it. Like this whole thing is literally a journey, right? It is going to take you time. You didn't get yourself in here in 2 months and 2 weeks, so it's going to take longer than that to get out. Like that's the fundamentals where like everybody should start. So, you know, if you're watching this, right, and you don't talk about money today, I would say like schedule a time, like every Saturday, every Monday, whatever, and just have a family discussion about money and make sure everybody kind of understands, you know, what things are. Like you don't have to, like the families, so you don't have to put that pressure on your kids. Don't sit there and be like, yeah, I got to pay these light bills. Y'all don't do that to your babies. Like they're going to have plenty of time in the world to worry about that shit. But at least let them know it's like, hey guys, this is what it is. Like we bring this much into the household. We do this and we have to do these things. Mommy and daddy have to do these to take care of this. And so that means we have this and we have this much money for fun stuff and all this stuff, whatever. You can talk about it in a way where you don't have to have your kids feeling like they're pressured or like, they don't want to ask for nothing because they was like, I don't know, man. Mommy and daddy said that we don't make a whole lot of money, so we can't ask for this or whatever.
I'll tell you what, man. And a lot of parents don't give their kids enough credit. C3 Squad, your kids are smart. They are. They understand. You can talk to them about things like finances without, you don't have to say, you better turn these lights off. I don't want to come downstairs and see these lights on. Like, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be adversarial.
Right.
You can just sit down with your kids, have a discussion. Hey, like, this is what we make. This is how we pay bills. This is why it's important that we pay attention to what, leaving the water running, leaving these lights on, having the AC on full blast. Like, I mean, you have to give people the reasons why. You can't just make demands out of them. So once you have those discussions, you get your budget tight, or at least it looks tight to where you want it. So what would be the next step? Now that I'm saving money,
right?
How do I accumulate more money?
So the next step after that is like when you're saving money, like you're first starting to save just to cover like emergency. So any financial advisor talks to you about emergency fund, right? It ranges. Some people say there's only one emergency fund. It should be a year's worth of salary. Some people do two, like where it's like, I know, right?
A year's worth.
Yeah, like that's
okay.
Some people consider emergency fund like a year's worth of salary. I'm of the aspect. I'm in the two modes where it's like you should have your first emergency fund should be which I call short term, which is like 3 to 6 months worth of salary. Something happens, like you can feed yourself and put a roof over your head for 3 to 6 months without. That's the first one. And then what I do is I usually don't look at like a year emergency fund. I say once you get that means you can. I say 3 for most people, but if they're working with me, I get them to 6 because that means if anything happens, you have a half a year where you don't have to worry about am I going to eat or am I going to do I have a roof over my head? Mm-hmm. You can do something about it, but you ain't got to like stress over that. Like that's taken care of. And I feel like 6 months is enough time to make a plan and kind of like recover. Anything after that, I'm saying you're putting towards your long-term, like what I call your financial freedom account. Like I don't call this shit retirement because I hate the way retirement is done and advertised. You see all these old people with gray hair doing that shit or whatever. You can retire whenever the fuck you want to, right? It just comes down to how much do you need to do that. You need to look at your lifestyle and say, okay, I want to be able to do these things. I want to be able to, pay for my kids' college. Whatever all the things you want to do, that's just a number. How fast you hit that number is up to you, right? So you can hit it at 65, you can hit it at 45. It's really just math, and you can kind of go backwards from there. So anything after the 6 months, then I say now you're working towards your financial freedom account, right? And the stuff there so you can kind of live the lifestyle you want. Now, how you do that is like, so I said, once you hit that, now you're not saving. Now what you're doing is now you're looking for investment opportunities, right? So now you're investing, whether it's, mutual funds, stocks, real estate, like things that will grow in value that, again, help you to fight that inflation, right? Because whatever your $40 today is not going to be worth $40 10 years from now. And so you want that money constantly growing and in different ways, right? And so there's tons of different ways and things you can invest in. You sit down, you figure out what makes sense to you, and then you start putting together that plan. And at that moment, once you got your budget together and you got your savings, start investing, now I tell everybody, now you get into asset accumulation mode. Everything you buy, anything you buy needs to be an asset, right? So I don't buy anything unless it's making me money or it has a potential to make me money, right? Because anything else is just a debt, right? And that doesn't mean that I don't buy anything. It's like, okay, cool, but you know mentally what that is. I want to go buy a new TV, fine, it's a new TV, right? Then I'll look at it and go, okay, it costs whatever, $800. I'll squirrel away $200 every check or whatever to get the $800. I'll go buy it. But I'm not going to like purchase something like, or, you know, take out money to go buy something unless it has the potential or I know it's going to return me money. Mm-hmm. So you move from once you have your debts managed and your savings and your investments, now you're looking at things and going, now how do I become a bank? How do I buy things and then they're paying me? I'm getting an interest off of them, right? I'm collecting interest every month or every quarter or every year on those things, and it continues to grow. And that's where you want your money. Now your money is working for you. So you go to work, you come home to your family, all that stuff, or whatever. Then when y'all go to sleep, your money is out there working just as hard as you are. And that's how you kind of get yourself in these better situations. And you can start to plan out and ride through like the down years, up years, stuff like that or whatever, because you know your money's already going and accumulating and doing those things.
So how important is it to, I guess, to hire a funds manager or, you know, someone who, a financial planner, somebody who steers you in the right direction? Or is this something that the average person can kind of do on their own?
Honestly, like anybody can do this, right? And as an actual licensed financial professional, like I can tell you, like, you don't need to hire anybody, mm-hmm. but you don't need to hire a personal trainer either. Mm-hmm. Like what it comes down to is you've got to look yourself in the mirror and go, can I trust myself to be accountable, to be disciplined, because discipline is hard, to do these things? And am I going to take the time to go learn the things I need to learn to manage this accordingly, right? And then you make that decision. If you feel like I got this, I can do it, okay. But I would then do it. And you absolutely can. But I tell everybody, always measure everything then. If you're going to do it for yourself, then you find a metric and go, okay, well, if I'm going to do this and I'm going to manage all this stuff, invest in myself, I need to be seeing a 6% gain on my investments or whatever I'm doing every year. If you're not getting that, then ask for help. Then you go find help, mm-hmm. right? So it really comes down to you. And I tell people, when you work with a financial advisor, like you are not, they're helping you manage your money. It's your money. You don't turn your money over to anybody and just go, I'm going to let them do whatever. That's stupid. Please don't do that. Like you meet with them and say, okay, you have more experience, you understand these things. Let's find a plan that makes sense to me and that I agree with. If you meet with somebody and they start talking to you and you have no clue what they're saying, walk the fuck out. Do not give them your money, right? And I think the financial advisor market took a hit because a lot of people got involved in this and they just got intimidated by it's a different language. It's like learning French or Spanish. It really is a different language. You have all this stuff thrown at you that you don't use every day. So you're just like, okay, well, this sounds good, so I'm going to trust it. No, like if you don't understand it, make them explain it to you. If they get frustrated with you, find somebody else, right? Like you need to go in there knowing exactly. You don't have to like have their same level of proficiency, but you should be able to understand like what's going on with your money. It's like, hey, I'm invested in this market. We're doing this. I'm doing these things. Like, and I can expect this in these areas. Like you should know kind of what your money's going to do, right? In a general sense, and then be able to have conversations with them and say, hey, I know we're going to invest in like these real estate areas because I know I'm really invested in that. And I saw these opportunities. What do you think? Right. And they would tell you, well, this is a good opportunity based on what we've talked about and your profile, and what we're going and your goals are. And this is probably not great because here's why. Right. And it should always be an ongoing conversation. You should think of your financial advisor as like another part like of your circle, like a good friend or a family member that you talk to about stuff. It should not be a transaction based. You pick up the phone and call. Like if that's the case, you got the wrong type of financial advisor. So
what is the financial barrier of entry for someone who's looking to hire a financial planner or, you know, a hedge fund manager or whatever, an investment manager? Because some people, they see this, they hear this, and they say, yeah, that's a great idea. That's exactly what I want to do. can't afford that shit.
Right.
So what is the financial barrier that people have to be able to get over before they can afford this?
And so that is a problem in the field, right? And I'll get into another podcast why it's a problem. But you have to kind of take those first steps that we talked about. Make sure you have a budget, make sure you're already saving, make sure you kind of have stabilized where your money is. Like you have money saved up. If you have debt, like you have like low debt, like maybe a couple $1,000s worth of debt, but you have a plan to get out of it. Like most of the time, you have to be at that level for a financial advisor really to help you, because you need to be in that mode where it's like I said earlier, you're investing, your asset accumulation, because they can't do anything for you if you don't have money to go and invest with. So if you're coming in and you're like, I don't have any savings, I don't have anything, they're not going to be able to help you because they're not going to take money that you need to live to go invest. No good financial advisor is ever going to do that. If they do, run. So they have to have something to start with first. So your first start is there. But with technology, obviously now there's a lot of things that a lot of the banks are offering, like, what they call like Robo Advisors, to where you can do a lot of this through your bank. You don't have to talk to somebody. Like, they set up algorithms for you that will show you how to invest in different things. They're very generic, and some of them kind of tune to what you have, but not really. Those are probably going to get better. So that's another path that you can use. Like if you feel like you can't really afford a financial advisor, you can kind of start there. But what I would tell people is, take those base fundamental steps. And then at that point, like you said, if you feel you need it, like go towards it. Right. So
that didn't really answer the question. Like what would it call? Like, I know different states have different.
Yeah. It's because it's not all right. There's no set cost for it. Right. Like you're going to, like, based on the financial advisor, the firm they work for, right, there's fees that they're going to charge you, but it's based on like how much you have willing to invest. It's not a flat thing they're going to charge you for, right? So most of them have what they call like a wrap program, like you invest so much, whatever, they'll manage that, and they take a percentage. But that's adjustable. Like, same thing. So like me, like I can adjust my fees based on, what they want to invest in, where they're at or whatever. So that is a financial advisor's freedom to do this. So that's why there's no standard answer of like, you need this much, right? It really depends on what you're at and where you're trying to do, which sucks as an answer. But the reason why that's an answer is because of that. The financial advisor has to sit with you and say, what do you actually have? What are we going to put together? Now, based on that, like, here's where it's going to be. Okay. Right. You can. So there's that if you want a full management. If you just like want to go sit with somebody and say, just give me financial advice, like help me figure out these portfolios. Again, financial advisors have the flexibility to charge per hour what they want. You're open that skilled labor. So some could charge you $100 an hour. Some could charge you $400 or $500 an hour. Like some will do it free, like a first consultation. Yeah, so that just kind of really depends, right? It's how that person values their time, because I can tell you, they put a lot of time. There's a lot of effort. There's a lot of research into doing that. A lot of people don't do that for free, right? There's just a lot to do. So unfortunately, there is no like base kind of answer. It's more, you need to be at a certain level with your finances for that to make sense, and then they can kind of start working with you. Okay. Right.
But there are options. There are lower cost options out there that are available. And then there are, some people who this is their profession and they, actually manage your portfolios, and, they require higher fees.
So Robin had actually changed the game with so now like banks like Chase, Charles Schwab, E-Trade, like, especially if you're looking at the investing stuff, most of them, like, you can open an account for free. They don't charge for commissions, things like that. Most of the banks have some kind of investment portfolio, like a section to where you can go and like buy the stocks and mutual funds and whatever, investing in yourself. And again, there's not a charge for that. You just open up the account. So in that case, there is no entry fee, right? It's just deciding what you want to do. But yeah, getting to financial advisors, seeking financial help there is a barrier there. And unfortunately, it's not a standard thing. It's not, kind of set. That's one of the things, bigger goals of mine that I want to help change and drive it to where you start having things where it is just accessible, right? But there's a lot of like laws and regulations on the security side that prevent that indirectly, not directly. Again, it's one of these things like just old laws that were written 70, 80 years ago that just don't apply to today's, but they're still enforced. Right. So
yeah. And that's actually another good topic for a podcast, is kind of going back through these old antiquated laws and seeing how they're having real world effects on, especially the Black community today. Right. So yeah, that would be a very interesting topic that we could get into at another time.
Yeah. So, I think that's it for this one. Like, we've talked a lot. This is weird with these live segments. I can't see the time anymore. I don't know where we're at. But, I think the biggest thing that I would wrap up on for me, like a final statement, is like there is a disparity. There's a lot of reasons why we have a disparity. And I think it affects the Black community the most. I'm biased because I'm Black, so whatever.
You're also right.
There's a lot of reasons for it, and I think more than not, we just need to, as a community, start realizing that it's there. And instead of complaining or fighting against the fact that it's there, let's start taking that energy to just fix it, right? Again, are we up against systemic issues? Absolutely. But there's steps that we can take to start arming ourselves with knowledge and understanding things that we can do to utilize some of the systems that are against us to kind of bring some of that equity back to at least our people in our community. And that's kind of fits the values of everything we do here on Ebony Centers on the Corners, to have these discussions and bring it to our people in our community so you can start talking about it and giving you guys the resources to start doing some of that stuff. And as we grow as a company, more things are coming, we'll start to get a lot more into that you can interact with us in different ways and kind of get that. But this has been dope, man. I'm glad we had a chance to get together and do this. And I don't know how many much more live episodes we'll have. We'll try and get some more, but definitely got more episodes.
Yeah, once we buy the high rise somewhere in downtown Atlanta and we can all come together in the studio, I think we'll be able to do that. We'll be able to have more live episodes. But I do love being able to have these types of discussions. It's something that the Black community sorely needs, and we've kind of grown up missing this type of thing. So for those of you on the C3 squad that's out there looking for more information like this, please come to our website, ebonyascent.com. You can check us out on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, search Ebony Ascent, on Twitter, at Ascent Ebony. We gotta work on that. I don't know. Who has the Ebony Ascent?
I don't know. I gotta go find it. When I went to go register, it wouldn't let me do it. So
all right. So y'all know I'm in the military. I can put together a squad to find who has the Twitter Ebony Ascent handle. We need that handle, bro. That can't be the only thing that we have slipping. But yeah, for all jokes aside, this is the type of information that we want to bring to you guys. Look us up on all the social medias. Hit us up, engage, ask questions, post questions. info@onthecorner.com. .us. info@onthecorner.us. That's where we can field your emails, answer questions that you have. If you want to come up with different show topics, let us know. This is going to be something driven by the community, and we're going to be able to provide it to you. So get at us.
Man, this is great having another host. I'm going to say everything. That's it. Say 12, y'all know what it is. Next cocktail to the next conversation. Y'all stay safe.
Stay safe out there.